The silver blade was meant to end the vampire princess's life, but when it fell, a human stranger stepped between her and death, and the choice she made to save him would force an entire kingdom to kneel. Nathan Mercer had been warned not to look directly at Princess Seraphine Vale. Humans brought before the Crimson Court were expected to keep their eyes lowered, their hands visible, and their voices silent unless addressed. Nathan had managed the first two. The third became impossible the moment he noticed the assassin. He stood near the rear of the throne hall beneath a balcony of black marble, dressed in the plain gray coat of a human treaty clerk, surrounded by nobles who regarded him as little more than furniture. Nearly 200 candles burned along the towering walls, yet the room remained cold enough for his breath to mist in front of him. At the far end of the hall, Princess Seraphine stood before the obsidian throne while the Blood Council debated whether humanity deserved another year of peace. She looked exactly like the warnings carved into border town churches, pale as winter moonlight, motionless as a statue, with dark hair falling over the silver armor at her shoulders. But the stories had never mentioned the exhaustion hidden behind her crimson eyes. Nathan saw it because he had spent his life recognizing the quiet expressions of people forced to remain strong in rooms that wanted them to fail. The princess was powerful enough to silence every noble in the chamber with a glance, yet she stood alone beneath the weight of their judgment. Lord Malrek, the oldest counselor, accused her of weakness for negotiating with humans. Another noble demanded the border settlements be surrendered to vampire rule. Seraphine answered each challenge calmly, though Nathan noticed her fingers tighten around the edge of the treaty table. Then a servant crossed the balcony above her. Nothing about him appeared unusual at first. He carried a ceremonial banner folded over both arms, his face hidden beneath a crimson hood. But Nathan noticed the man was walking against the rhythm of the court. Every servant moved when the bells chimed. This one moved between them. Nathan's father had taught him that danger often revealed itself through small mistakes. A door left open, a horse that refused a familiar road, a man pretending not to be afraid. The servant's right hand disappeared beneath the folded banner. A narrow silver blade caught the candlelight. Nathan did not think. He did not calculate the distance, remember his rank, or consider what the court would do to a human who broke protocol. He only saw the blade aimed at Seraphine's back. "Princess!" His shout shattered the ceremony. Hundreds of faces turned toward him. The assassin moved. Nathan ran. The guards reached for their weapons, but the attacker was already falling from the balcony, cloak spreading like a dark wing as the silver blade descended toward Seraphine. She turned at the sound of Nathan's voice, yet even vampire speed could not fully overcome surprise. Nathan crossed the final yards and stepped between them. The blade struck the metal clasp at his shoulder, driving him hard against the treaty table. A flash of silver light filled his vision. He did not feel pain so much as a sudden cold that seemed to steal the strength from his limbs. The assassin landed beside him, but Seraphine was no longer still. One moment she stood near the throne. The next, she had seized the attacker by the wrist and forced the weapon away. The Crimson Guard surrounded the assassin before he could move again. No one in the hall spoke. Nathan sank to one knee, gripping the table to keep from falling. The silver blade had not cut deeply, but its surface carried an ancient vampire poison designed to extinguish royal blood. Against a human body, no one knew what it would do. Seraphine stared at him as though the entire court had vanished. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper, yet it carried through the silent chamber. Nathan tried to answer, but his breath came unevenly. "You were standing closer." It was not heroic. It was not eloquent. It was simply true. Something changed in her expression. For one heartbeat, the feared princess of the Crimson Court looked neither ancient nor invincible. She looked stunned. Lord Malrek stepped forward, his black robes whispering across the marble. "Leave him," he ordered. "The human interfered in royal blood business. His fate is irrelevant." Seraphine's gaze lifted from Nathan to the counselor. The air in the hall grew colder. "He took a silver blade meant for me. He is still human." "Yes," she said softly. And every immortal in this room stood still. The accusation struck harder than a shout. Several nobles looked away. Nathan's hand slipped from the table. Seraphine caught him before he reached the floor. A murmur swept through the court as the princess lowered herself onto the marble beside a human. Royal vampires did not kneel. not before counselors, foreign kings, or even the dead. Yet Seraphine knelt without hesitation, one arm supporting Nathan's shoulders while her other hand hovered over the silver marks spreading beneath the torn fabric of his coat. Captain Vera of the Crimson Guard approached carefully. "Your Highness, the poison is moving toward his heart. Human physicians may not reach the palace in time. Then summon our healers. They cannot treat a mortal with royal venom. The old laws forbid the exchange." Nathan heard the words as though they came from the end of a long corridor. The candles blurred into golden stars. Seraphine looked down at him, and for the first time he saw fear in the eyes of a woman the entire kingdom believed incapable of it. Lord Malrek raised his staff. "The law is clear. Let nature decide." Seraphine slowly rose, still holding Nathan against her. Her crimson eyes burned brighter than every torch in the hall. "No," she said. The single word silenced the council. She removed the signet ring from her hand, pressed its ancient crest against her palm, and spoke a phrase in the old vampire tongue. Every noble in the court recoiled. Captain Vera dropped to one knee. Lord Malrek's face lost all color. Nathan did not understand the words, but he understood their effect. The palace bells began ringing by themselves. Red light traveled through the veins of the marble floor, circling Seraphine and the human in her arms. "Princess," Malrek whispered, suddenly afraid. "You cannot invoke the first covenant for him." Seraphine looked down at Nathan, her expression fierce, wounded, and utterly certain. "He placed his life between mine and a silver blade," she said. "Now my blood stands between him and death." Then she pressed her marked hand over his heart, and every vampire in the Crimson Court bowed as the ancient law awakened. Nathan Mercer woke to the sound of rain tapping against a window he did not recognize, soft and steady, almost ordinary, which made the truth of where he was feel even more impossible. The ceiling above him was carved from black stone and crossed by silver beams. A fire burned behind a screen of dark glass on the far side of the room, giving off warmth without smoke. Heavy curtains framed a narrow window nearly 12 feet tall, and beyond it the towers of the vampire palace disappeared into a storm the color of iron. For several seconds, Nathan lay still beneath a blanket far finer than anything he had ever owned, trying to remember how he had arrived there. Then the memory returned in fragments. The hidden blade, the princess turning too late, the cold spreading through his chest, the court watching while Seraphine invoked a law older than the kingdom. He lifted one hand toward his heart. The poison mark was gone. In its place rested a faint crimson symbol beneath his skin, shaped like a circle divided by a narrow line. It pulsed once when he touched it, not painfully, but with the strange awareness that something on the other side of the palace had noticed he was awake. A healer sat near the foot of the bed, an older vampire woman in a gray robe, her white hair braided down her back. She looked up from the book in her lap. "Do not move too quickly," she said. "Your body survived what it was never designed to survive." Nathan slowly pushed himself upright. "How long?" "9 hours." "The princess." The healer studied him before answering. "Still alive, still furious, and still refusing to leave the eastern corridor." Nathan looked toward the closed door. "She has been outside this room the entire time?" "Not outside the door. That would imply patience. She has been pacing 30 feet away because Captain Vera convinced her that watching you sleep would alarm the human physicians." Nathan almost smiled, but the expression faded when he noticed his gray treaty coat folded across a chair. The shoulder clasp was bent, and the fabric had been carefully repaired. The sight of it brought him back to a smaller room thousands of miles away, where his father had once mended that same coat by lamplight because Nathan could not afford a new one. Thomas Mercer had been a schoolteacher in the border settlement of Willow Creek, a town so small that most maps marked it only with a dot beside the northern road. He had raised Nathan alone after fever took Nathan's mother when Nathan was 6 years old. They had never owned much. Their house leaned slightly to the west. The roof leaked every spring, and the stove needed to be struck twice before it would light. Yet Thomas had made their life feel rich in the ways that mattered. He taught Nathan to read from old history books with missing covers. He taught him to listen before speaking, to notice who was being ignored in a crowded room, and to measure a person by what they did when no reward was offered. "Courage is rarely loud," his father used to say. "Most of the time, it is one tired person deciding not to look away." Nathan had been 19 when the border famine began. The northern harvest failed, trade routes closed, and vampire patrols were blamed for every wagon that vanished in the mountain passes, whether they were responsible or not. Fear spread faster than hunger. Human officials demanded soldiers. Vampire nobles demanded tribute. Ordinary families were trapped between powers that spoke of honor, while children counted pieces of bread. Thomas Mercer opened the schoolhouse as a shelter. He shared his winter stores until there was almost nothing left. When armed men from a human militia came searching for a vampire refugee rumored to be hiding in town, Thomas refused to surrender a frightened teenage girl who had appeared near the river at dawn. She was pale, starving, and terrified, but she had harmed no one. Thomas hid her beneath the floorboards and told the militia that monsters were not defined by their blood. The men left without finding her. 3 days later, Thomas was arrested for aiding an enemy of humanity. He died in custody before Nathan could reach the capital. The official report called it illness. Nathan never believed it. He also never learned the name of the vampire girl his father had saved. For years, that unanswered memory had followed him from Willow Creek to the stone halls of the human ministry. Nathan had not joined the diplomatic service because he dreamed of power. He joined because documents could open borders, delay executions, and force proud men to explain decisions they preferred to make in darkness. He learned ancient law, trade customs, court dialects, and the careful language of treaties. He worked twice as hard as the sons of wealthy families and received half their recognition. They called him useful, dependable, quiet. Never brilliant. Never important. When the delegation to the Crimson Court needed a junior clerk willing to travel into vampire territory, 3 senior officials found reasons to remain home. Nathan volunteered. His supervisor had laughed and told him it was a career without a future. "You will spend 6 months copying speeches for creatures who think humans are livestock," the man said. Nathan answered that 6 months was enough time to prevent a war. In truth, he had another reason for accepting. The treaty archives held sealed records from the year his father died. If negotiations succeeded, the Crimson Court had agreed to release documents concerning refugees who crossed the border during the famine. Somewhere in those records might be the identity of the girl Thomas Mercer had protected. Somewhere there might be proof that his father's final act had mattered. Nathan had carried that hope quietly through every insult, every cold meeting, and every long night translating legal codes no one else wanted to read. It was why he noticed details. It was why he recognized fear beneath ceremony. It was why, when Princess Seraphine stood alone before a hostile council, he had seen not merely a vampire royal, but a person surrounded by witnesses who had already decided her life was less valuable than their laws. The healer closed her book. "Your heart rate changes when you remember painful things." Nathan lowered his hand from the mark on his chest. "That seems unfair. Most vampire senses are unfair by human standards. Can the princess sense it too?" The healer's silence answered him. Nathan glanced again toward the door. What exactly did she do? She shared a fragment of her royal essence through the first covenant. It neutralized the poison and persuaded your body to continue living. Persuaded. Your body was extremely stubborn. That sounds familiar. The healer almost smiled. The covenant does more than heal. Until the bond settles, your physical condition affects hers, and hers may affect you. Distance will weaken both of you. Sudden fear may cross between you. Strong emotion may be difficult to conceal. Nathan stared at her. How long does it take to settle? No one knows. That is not comforting. The first covenant has not been invoked for a human in 712 years. Comfort is not currently available. Before Nathan could ask another question, voices rose beyond the door. Captain Vera spoke first, firm and controlled. Lord Malrek answered with the sharp authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. The human must be removed from the palace before sunset. Every hour he remains here makes the princess's violation more visible. Seraphine's voice followed, quiet enough that the others fell silent to hear it. He remains. Your Highness, this attachment is precisely what the assassin intended to create. You have tied the stability of the throne to a mortal clerk. A mortal clerk noticed a threat that 200 immortals failed to see. His courage does not change his nature. No, Seraphine said. It reveals yours. Nathan swung his legs over the side of the bed. The floor was cold beneath his feet, but his balance held. The healer stood. You should rest. If people are arguing about my future, I would prefer to be present. That statement may explain why you became a diplomat. Junior treaty clerk. After last night, titles may become complicated. Nathan reached for his repaired coat, but the healer stopped him and handed him a plain black shirt instead. The silver residue remains on the fabric. Captain Vera will have it cleansed. He dressed slowly, aware of the crimson mark warming beneath the cloth. When he reached the door, it opened before he touched it. Seraphine stood on the other side. In daylight, she looked different from the distant royal figure he had watched across the throne hall. Her dark hair had been left unbound, falling over a simple high-collared gown the color of midnight. She wore no crown and no armor. Without them, the exhaustion in her face was impossible to miss. Lord Malrek stood several paces behind her with Captain Vera and 2 members of the council. Malrek's eyes moved to Nathan as though an administrative problem had learned to walk. Seraphine said nothing at first. Her gaze lowered briefly to his chest, where the mark was hidden, and Nathan felt a flicker of relief that did not belong entirely to him. "You should not be standing," she said. "I have been told that repeatedly, and yet you ignored the instruction. That also sounds familiar." Captain Vera looked away, possibly to conceal amusement. Seraphine did not smile, but something in her expression softened before she remembered the council was watching. Lord Malrek stepped forward. "Nathan Mercer, by entering royal affairs, you have placed both kingdoms in danger. The council will determine whether your actions were accidental, manipulated, or part of a human conspiracy." Nathan met his gaze. "I stepped between the princess and a weapon. That is the entire conspiracy. You expect us to believe a powerless clerk acted without ambition? I expect nothing from you." The answer came calmly, but the mark beneath Nathan's shirt grew warm. Seraphine felt his anger. He realized it at the same moment she looked at him. Lord Malrek lifted his chin. "Humans always want something." Nathan thought of Willow Creek, of his father's repaired coat, of a nameless vampire girl hidden beneath a schoolhouse floor, and of sealed records waiting somewhere in the palace archives. "Then you should be relieved," he said. "I did not save her because of what I wanted." Seraphine's eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but in recognition. She knew he was holding something back. The bond had told her as clearly as words. Before she could question him, a palace bell rang once from the western tower. Captain Vera's hand moved to the hilt at her side. A messenger hurried into the corridor carrying a black envelope sealed with silver wax. He knelt before Seraphine. "Your Highness, the council has identified the assassin." Seraphine took the envelope. The moment she broke the seal, Nathan felt her fear strike through the covenant, cold and immediate. She read the name inside, then looked at him with an expression that made the entire corridor seem to darken. "This was not an attack against me," she said. "The blade was meant to force me to invoke the covenant." Lord Malrek went still. Nathan felt the mark over his heart pulse again. Seraphine folded the message in one hand. "Someone wanted a human bound to the vampire princess," she said, "and they chose you before you ever entered my court." The name inside the black envelope belonged to a dead man. Nathan knew that before anyone explained it, because Lord Malrek read the message twice and then turned toward Captain Vera with the expression of someone watching the laws of nature betray him. The assassin had carried the seal of House Vaylor, a royal bloodline erased from court records more than a century earlier after its final heir was declared executed for treason. Yet the silver wax was genuine. The palace recognized it. The doors at the end of the corridor locked by themselves, ancient mechanisms moving inside the stone, and a deep bell sounded beneath the floor. Seraphine folded the message and placed it in Captain Vera's hand. "Seal the eastern wing. No one leaves the palace until we know who restored that crest." Malrek stepped between her and the guards. "You no longer possess sole authority to issue that order." Nathan felt Seraphine's anger through the mark over his heart, not as a thought, but as a sudden pressure in the air. She remained perfectly still. "Explain yourself carefully." Malrek pointed his staff toward Nathan without looking at him. "The first covenant has awakened. Until the court determines whether the bond is lawful, every command you give may be considered influenced by a foreign life." Seraphine's eyes darkened. "He is not controlling me. That is not the question. The law does not require control. It requires doubt." The corridor fell silent. Nathan had spent years studying vampire treaties, but those documents covered borders, trade, and military conduct. They said almost nothing about the private laws of royal blood. Human scholars assumed that secrecy was vanity. Watching the counselors avoid Seraphine's gaze, Nathan understood that secrecy was fear. Captain Vera ordered the other guards away, then led Nathan, Seraphine, and Malrek through a narrow passage behind the eastern chapel. The hallway descended in slow circles beneath the palace. With each turn, the polished marble disappeared, replaced by older stone marked with symbols Nathan could not read. The air grew colder. Candles burned inside red glass, though no servant had lit them. Nathan counted nearly 300 steps before they reached a round chamber buried deep beneath the court. Its walls were covered with names carved in silver. Some were written in the modern vampire language. Others belonged to alphabets older than the human kingdoms. At the center stood a table made from a single slab of dark crystal. 3 books rested on it beneath iron chains. The Covenant Archive, Varys said. Only royal blood, the first guard, and the keeper of law may enter. Nathan glanced at Malrek. Which one are you? The man deciding whether you leave this chamber alive, Malrek answered. Seraphine moved closer to Nathan before she spoke. He is the keeper of law. An unnecessarily dramatic title. An unnecessarily dangerous human, Malrek replied. He placed his palm on the crystal table. The chains released with a metallic whisper. One of the books opened without being touched, its pages turning until they stopped at an illustration of 2 figures facing each other beneath a divided moon. One wore a crown. The other had no face. Malrek began reading in the old language, then translated each line with visible reluctance. When royal blood is preserved by willing sacrifice, the saved may return life through the first covenant. The debt shall bind strength to mortality, truth to silence, and throne to witness until balance is restored. Nathan looked at Seraphine. What does balance mean? She did not answer. Malrek turned the next page. It means the law believes your life now carries part of hers. Her strength preserved you. Your survival stabilizes what she gave away. Nathan remembered the healers saying that distance would weaken them. How far can we be separated? At first, perhaps 1 mile, Varys said. Later, perhaps more. The bond changes according to trust. That sounds less like law and more like judgment. Among vampires, the oldest laws are both. Malrek traced another line on the page. If the mortal rejects the bond before the first moon, the royal essence returns damaged. The princess could lose her claim to the throne. Nathan felt Seraphine's reaction before he saw it. A quiet wave of dread passed through the covenant, quickly buried beneath discipline. And if the court rejects me? Nathan asked. Malrek's silence lasted too long. Seraphine answered. Then the council may order the bond severed. What happens to us? The law was written for vampire houses, not humans. That does not answer the question, because there is no certain answer. Malrek closed the book halfway. There is a likely one. The human dies. The royal survives, diminished and permanently disqualified from succession. Captain Vera's hand tightened around the back of a chair. Seraphine's face remained calm, but Nathan felt the cold fury beneath it. You knew this when you told the healers to let him die, she said. Malrek met her gaze. I knew the kingdom could survive the death of one human more easily than a disputed throne. Nathan stepped toward the table. The kingdom is already disputed. Someone arranged the attack because they knew this law would be activated. Malrek studied him. You assumed the attacker expected you to intervene. The message said I was chosen before I entered the court. That means they knew enough about me to predict what I would do. No one can predict sacrifice. My father could. The words left Nathan before he intended to speak them. Seraphine turned toward him. Through the bond, he felt her attention sharpen. Malrek opened the book fully again and revealed a list of conditions written beneath the covenant text. The law does not awaken for every rescue. The act must be voluntary. The danger must be recognized. The royal must return life freely. Most importantly, the mortal must have acted without expectation of reward. Nathan read the translated notes in the margin. Several were warnings. A false sacrifice corrupted the bond. A coerced bond weakened royal authority. A bond created for political gain could be challenged by any recognized house. That is why the assassin chose a human clerk, he said. Someone with no title, no army, and no obvious reason to want the throne. Malrek's expression hardened. or someone trained to appear harmless. Seraphine stepped between them. Enough. She placed her hand above the open book. The crimson mark beneath Nathan's shirt answered with a slow pulse. The symbols on the page began to glow. A final passage appeared where the parchment had been blank. Even Malrek looked surprised. Vera leaned closer. That line was not there before. Malrek translated quietly. When the life returned is foreign to the blood, the court shall summon the trial of 3 truths before the first moon reaches its height. Nathan looked toward the narrow window cut near the ceiling. Evening had begun to darken the sky. How long until the moon reaches its height? 7 nights, Seraphine said. Malrek turned the page, but the following sheets were empty. The details of the trial were removed. By whom? Nathan asked. The last ruler who invoked it. Captain Vera walked to the wall of silver names and stopped beneath one carved deeper than the others. Queen Alara Vale, first mother of the Crimson Court. Beside her name was another, written in a human alphabet. Daniel Mercer. Nathan stopped breathing for a moment. The chamber seemed to narrow around him. Seraphine looked from the wall to Nathan, and the shock that crossed the covenant belonged to both of them. Mercer, she said. Your family name has been inside this archive for 700 years. Nathan approached the carving without touching it. I have never heard of Daniel Mercer. Malrek opened a hidden compartment beneath the table and removed a thin metal cylinder sealed with the same symbol now resting over Nathan's heart. Then your family has forgotten what the court was ordered to remember. The cylinder opened at his touch. Inside was a strip of preserved parchment and a small silver key. The message contained only one sentence in modern English. When the covenant wakes again, do not trust the keeper of law. Nathan raised his eyes. Malrek was no longer standing beside the table. The chamber door had closed, and from the other side came the sound of ancient locks turning into place. The locks finished turning with a sound that seemed to travel through the bones of the palace, and for one breath Nathan heard nothing except the slow pulse of the crimson mark above his heart. Seraphine crossed the chamber and pressed her palm against the sealed door. The old stone did not move. Captain Vera tried the hidden release beside the frame, then stepped back when silver symbols appeared beneath her fingers. The chamber has entered judgment protocol, she said. It cannot be opened from either side until the archive accepts a verdict. Nathan looked toward the place where Malrek had stood moments earlier. He knew the door would seal. He is the keeper of law, Seraphine replied. He knows every mechanism beneath this court. Then the warning was accurate. She turned toward him. A sentence written 700 years ago cannot know the man Malrek became. It did not name him. It named his office. Captain Vera moved around the crystal table, examining the carved floor. That may be worse. A low vibration passed through the chamber. The candles behind the red glass dimmed, and pale light spread across the silver names on the walls. Daniel Mercer's name shone brighter than the others. The small key in Nathan's hand grew warm. Seraphine noticed it immediately. Do not use that until we understand what it opens. The archive is not giving us much time to study. A second vibration followed, stronger than the first. Dust drifted from the ceiling, and one of the iron chains around the ancient books lifted as if drawn upward by an invisible hand. The oldest volume opened to a page that had been blank. New words appeared line by line in dark red ink. Vera read them aloud. The blood of the throne has entered with the blood of the witness. Let the first burden be named. The floor answered. A narrow path of light formed between Seraphine and Nathan, dividing the chamber into 2 equal halves. The temperature dropped sharply. Seraphine's posture changed, every trace of uncertainty disappearing behind royal control. This is the beginning of the trial of 3 truths. I thought the trial would happen before the court, Nathan said. So did I. The path brightened. A voice emerged from the walls, neither male nor female, old enough that the words seemed to belong to the stone itself. Who carried the danger? Nathan looked at Seraphine. That seems obvious. Ancient law rarely asks a question because it lacks the answer, she said. It asks because the answer carries a price. The voice repeated itself. Who carried the danger? Seraphine stepped toward the line. I was the target. The light beneath her feet remained unchanged. Captain Vera shook her head. It does not mean the blade. Nathan understood a moment later. It means the burden created by what happened afterward. Seraphine's eyes moved to him. Do not speak before we know the consequence. The chamber will not let us remain silent. Nathan faced the wall of names. I carried the danger. The instant he said it, the light crossed the floor and gathered beneath him. The mark over his heart flared with warmth. Seraphine staggered one step, her hand rising toward her chest. Nathan felt the same sensation through the bond, a sudden hollowing weakness that did not belong to either of them alone. Vera reached for the open book. New words appeared. The mortal accepts the first burden. The royal strength shall withdraw until the truth of sacrifice is proven. Seraphine's face tightened. Nathan, retract the answer. Can I? You will try. He looked toward the walls. I withdraw my answer. Nothing changed. The ancient voice returned. The burden is named. Silver light rose around Seraphine like a thin mist. It pulled away from her shoulders, her hands, and the dark outline of her shadow. The power moving through the chamber was not destructive, but its effect was immediate. The princess's presence, which had filled every room since Nathan first saw her, began to fade. Her crimson eyes dimmed. The air no longer bent around her authority. She remained standing through discipline alone. Captain Vera moved to her side. The archive is suppressing her royal essence. Nathan stepped across the glowing line, but an invisible force stopped him. How do we end it? By proving the sacrifice was freely given, Seraphine said. Her voice was steady, though he could feel the strain beneath it. The law suspects your action was arranged. It was arranged. The assassin selected me. Selection is not the same as consent. The trial must decide whether you chose to save me or merely completed someone else's design. The walls shifted. The silver names disappeared behind moving panels of stone, and the crystal table sank into the floor. In its place rose a circular pedestal with a keyhole at its center. Nathan lifted the silver key. It matched perfectly. That is too convenient, Vera said. It was left by my ancestor for this moment. Or by the person who planned this moment, Seraphine replied. The distinction stopped him. The parchment had warned him against the keeper of law, but a warning could guide a man towards safety or drive him into a prepared mistake. Every clue in the chamber seemed to anticipate his choices. Nathan looked at Daniel Mercer's name, now barely visible behind the closing stone. What happened 700 years ago? Seraphine leaned against the wall, conserving strength. Queen Alara invoked the covenant during the War of Ash. Human records say Daniel Mercer served as her translator. Human records say nothing about him. Vampire records say almost nothing either. After the war, Alara ordered the trial sealed. Daniel vanished, and the office of Keeper of Law was created. Vera turned toward the sealed door, created to prevent the covenant from ever placing the throne at risk again. Nathan studied the key. Then Malrek's authority exists because of my ancestor. Possibly. And someone wearing the crest of a dead house forced history to repeat itself. The ancient voice spoke again. The royal shall be measured by weakness. The witness shall be measured by choice. Open the path or abandon the throne. A second keyhole appeared on the opposite side of the pedestal. It was shaped like the royal signet Seraphine had pressed into her palm when she saved Nathan. She looked at it and understood before he did. It requires both of us. Nathan raised the key. Then we use them together. No, you have a better option. The trial has already taken most of the strength I shared with you. If we activate the pedestal, it may demand the remainder. What happens if we do nothing? Vera read the final line forming in the book. At sunset, the archive will declare the bond false. Nathan will be surrendered to the council. The princess will lose her succession claim. Nathan glanced toward the high window. The storm clouds had turned copper at their edges. Sunset was less than an hour away. That is not a choice. It is exactly a choice, Seraphine said. The law is offering me the throne in exchange for you. Her words settled heavily in the chamber. Nathan felt no uncertainty from her, only anger that such a decision had been placed before her. He walked to the edge of the invisible barrier separating them. You cannot surrender the kingdom because one clerk was foolish enough to step forward. Do not reduce what you did simply because the consequence frightens you. I am trying to keep you alive. And I am trying to keep you from turning your goodness into a habit of disappearing. The sentence struck closer than she could have known, or perhaps the bond had shown her more than he realized. Nathan remembered his father giving away winter food until his own cupboard was empty. He remembered the sealed custody report and the officials who praised Thomas Mercer's compassion only after it could no longer cost them anything. Nathan had spent years believing sacrifice was valuable because it asked for nothing in return. Seraphine was telling him that survival could also be a form of courage. The chamber shook again. This time the pedestal released a ring of silver light that moved outward across the floor. When it reached Captain Vera, she was pushed gently but firmly toward the wall. The trial wanted only the princess and the witness. Seraphine removed the royal signet from a chain beneath her collar. If we open the path, you must promise me one thing. What? You will not answer another question alone. I cannot promise that without knowing the question. For the first time since the chamber sealed, the faintest smile touched her face. That may be the most human response possible. She stepped toward her side of the pedestal. The invisible barrier allowed her through, though every step seemed to cost her. Nathan moved forward at the same pace until they stood opposite each other. The crystal reflected them not as they were, but as the law saw them. Seraphine appeared crowned and surrounded by shadow. Nathan appeared empty-handed, wearing the worn gray coat the healer had taken away. Behind his reflection stood another human man with the same eyes. Daniel Mercer. His image lasted only a second before vanishing. Nathan placed the silver key into its lock. Seraphine pressed her signet into the other. Together, she said. They turned them at the same moment. The pedestal opened like a dark flower. Inside rested a small glass vessel filled with crimson light and a folded document marked with the crest of House Valor. The vessel pulsed in rhythm with Nathan's heart. Seraphine reached toward it, then stopped. That is the essence I used to save you. Why is it here? Vera asked from the wall. The answer appeared across the pedestal in silver letters. To prove sacrifice, return what was taken. Nathan understood the trap completely. The trial was demanding that he give back the force keeping him alive. Seraphine seized the glass vessel before he could touch it. The chamber reacted at once. The light inside surged into her hand, but instead of accepting it, she closed her fingers around the vessel and held it against the mark above Nathan's heart. No, Nathan said. The law requires a return. Then it will receive one. Seraphine, you took the first burden without asking me. I will not permit you to take the last. She spoke to the chamber with the full authority of her bloodline, even as that authority continued to fade. I return my claim to an unquestioned throne. I return the obedience of those who value law above mercy. I return every protection that demands his death as its price. But I do not return his life. The glass vessel shattered into harmless crimson light. The power flowed through her hand and into Nathan's mark. The entire chamber went dark. For several long seconds, Nathan felt nothing from the bond. No warmth, no fear, no trace of Seraphine's presence. Then her knees weakened. He crossed the space between them and caught her before she reached the floor, supporting her exactly as she had supported him in the throne hall. The ancient voice filled the darkness. The royal has chosen weakness. The witness has chosen to remain. The first truth is accepted. The sealed door opened. Beyond it stood Lord Malrek with half the Blood Council and a line of palace guards. They had arrived expecting to see a human condemned and a princess restored. Instead, they saw Seraphine without her royal power, held upright by the mortal she had refused to sacrifice. Malrek's expression changed when he noticed the document still resting inside the open pedestal. Nathan reached for it with his free hand. The seal of House Valor broke at his touch. The first line was written in Daniel Mercer's handwriting. To my descendant, the woman you saved was never the true target. The court wanted her weakened, and they needed your heart to do it. Nathan looked beyond the page toward Malrek. The keeper of law raised his staff and addressed the waiting guards. Remove the human from the princess. Seraphine lifted her head from Nathan's shoulder. Her eyes no longer glowed, and the supernatural force of her command was gone. But every guard still hesitated when she spoke. Anyone who touches him, she said, will have to admit before this entire court that a powerless woman frightens them more than the truth. For 3 full seconds, no one in the corridor moved, and Nathan realized that Seraphine had revealed something more dangerous than supernatural strength. She had shown the court that its obedience had never depended on magic. Lord Malrek held his staff across the doorway while the members of the Blood Council waited behind him in ceremonial black robes. More guards filled the passage beyond, their silver armor reflecting the red light from the archive chamber. Any one of them could have stepped forward. None did. Seraphine remained against Nathan's shoulder, weakened by the trial, her breathing controlled but uneven. Her eyes had lost their crimson glow, and the cold authority that once surrounded her was gone. Yet Captain Vera lowered her head as if standing before the throne itself. "Your Highness," Vera said, "give the command." Malrek struck the base of his staff against the stone. "She has no authority here." The trial removed her royal essence. Until the council decides otherwise, Seraphine Vale is suspended from succession. Seraphine slowly straightened. Nathan kept one hand near her arm in case her balance failed, but she stepped away from him before the court could mistake support for weakness. "You have spent so many years measuring power," she said to Malrek, "that you have forgotten what it is for." He lifted his chin. "Power exists to preserve the kingdom. No, power exists to protect those who cannot protect themselves. A kingdom that forgets that is merely a prison with banners." A quiet unease passed through the guards. Nathan felt it before he saw it. Several of them had family in the border provinces. Others had served under Seraphine during the winter evacuations, when she opened royal storehouses against the council's objections. Malrek commanded the law, but Seraphine carried their loyalty. The distinction had never been tested until now. Malrek pointed toward Nathan. "That human has compromised the throne, entered a sealed archive, and awakened a forbidden covenant. Remove him." Two council guards finally stepped forward. Seraphine turned her head, and they stopped without understanding why. There was no flash of red in her eyes, no supernatural pressure, no hidden force holding them in place. There was only recognition. They knew her. They remembered who had stood beside them during the siege of Black Hollow, who had remained outside the palace gates during the plague years, and who had spoken the names of fallen soldiers when the council called them replaceable. "Tell me your names," she said. The first guard swallowed. "Elias Dorn, Your Highness." "Mara Voss," said the second. "Elias, your brother commands the Western Watch." "Mara, your mother runs a shelter near the southern wall." "If Malrek ordered you to surrender them because protecting them endangered the court, would you obey?" Neither answered. "Then do not ask me to surrender the man who placed himself between me and death." Malrek's expression hardened. "This is emotional manipulation." "It is memory," Seraphine said. "Something law should possess." Nathan watched the balance of the corridor change. The guards had not chosen rebellion, but they had stopped acting like tools. That hesitation frightened Malrek more than open defiance would have. He turned to the council. "Witness what the covenant has done. She places one mortal above centuries of order." "One mortal saw danger while centuries of order watched," Captain Vera replied. Malrek faced her. "Your duty is to the crown. My duty is to the woman worthy of it." He raised his staff again, and silver symbols awakened along its length. Nathan recognized the pattern from the archive door. Malrek was not merely carrying a ceremonial object. The staff was connected to the palace itself. Stone panels shifted along the corridor. Heavy doors closed behind the council, sealing the passage to the upper floors. The red lamps dimmed. Somewhere overhead, bells began tolling in a slow sequence. Captain Vera drew a sharp breath. "He has activated the Keeper's mandate." "What does that mean?" Nathan asked. "The palace now recognizes Malrek as temporary regent. Every ward, gate, and guard oath answers to him until the council confirms or rejects his claim." Malrek's voice echoed through the stone. "Seraphine Vale, by authority of the Keeper's mandate, you are ordered to surrender the human witness and submit to confinement until the trial of three truths is complete." Seraphine looked toward the silver staff. For the first time, Nathan felt uncertainty through the covenant. It did not come from fear for herself. It came from calculation. If she resisted, Malrek could name her a threat to the kingdom. If she obeyed, Nathan would disappear into the same legal machinery that had swallowed his father. The council had designed the choice so that either answer would destroy her. Nathan stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Let them take me." Her gaze snapped toward him. "No, you cannot protect the entire kingdom while trapped underground. And you cannot survive the council's protection. Then we find another way after you regain your authority. You still believe survival is something you can postpone." The mark above his heart warmed. Through it came a fragment of her exhaustion, older than the palace and deeper than the trial. She had spent centuries choosing duty first because everyone around her treated sacrifice as proof of worth. Nathan understood her because he had inherited the same wound. His father had given everything until nothing remained. Nathan had turned that loss into a life of quiet service. Now Seraphine stood before a kingdom that expected her to disappear piece by piece and call it leadership. He lowered his voice further. I am not asking you to abandon me. I am asking you to trust me. Trust is not the problem. Then what is? For one moment, the council, the guards, and the sealed corridors seemed to fall away. I do not know how to watch another good man walk willingly into a system built to erase him, she said. Nathan saw the truth behind the words. This was not the first time. Before he could ask who she had lost, Malrek turned the staff. The palace wards activated. Silver light formed a circle around Nathan's feet, cold but not painful, preventing him from moving. Seraphine reached for him, and the light climbed higher. Captain Vera shouted a warning. The old law had declared Seraphine powerless, but the Covenant did not respond to law. It responded to choice. Nathan felt something awaken inside the mark, not borrowed strength, not royal essence, but the memory of the moment she had refused to let him die. The crimson symbol spread across his chest in a pattern of light. The same pattern appeared across Seraphine's palm. She stared at it in disbelief. Malrek's confidence faltered. That is impossible. Seraphine closed her hand. The silver circle around Nathan fractured into harmless sparks. Every lamp in the corridor went dark. Then the palace windows, hundreds of feet above them, opened at once. A rush of night air descended through hidden shafts, carrying the scent of rain and distant pine. Shadows gathered along the floor, not crawling or attacking, but turning towards Seraphine as flowers turn towards sunlight. Her dark hair lifted in the wind. Crimson light returned to her eyes, brighter and clearer than before, yet the force surrounding her felt different. The old royal essence had been cold, distant, and inherited. This power was warm, immediate, and chosen. Captain Vera dropped to one knee. One by one, the Crimson Guard followed. Even several council members bowed before they realized what they were doing. Malrek stared at the glowing mark on Seraphine's palm. The trial removed your blood right. Yes, she said. Her voice carried through every stone corridor in the palace. It removed what I inherited. The shadows rose behind her, shaping themselves into vast wings that stretched nearly 20 feet from end to end. They were not physical wings and held no threat of violence. They were the visible form of an oath freely made, a mantle of darkness edged in crimson light. Ancient symbols appeared across the ceiling, older than the Keeper's mandate and untouched by Malrek's control. Nathan recognized one from the pedestal. The throne was bound to witness, but the witness was not bound to the throne. Seraphine stepped forward. With each step, the silver commands along Malrek's staff faded. The first covenant did not weaken me, she said. It separated the power of the crown from the worth of the woman wearing it. Malrek backed away until the council stood behind him. You are drawing strength from the human. No, I am drawing strength from the choice you believed made me weak. The shadows spread through the corridor, passing over every guard without touching them. Locked doors opened. Palace bells changed their rhythm. Across the upper floors, servants, soldiers, nobles, and visiting diplomats emerged from their rooms as Seraphine's voice traveled through the ancient walls. Hear me, Crimson Court. The Keeper has claimed emergency authority and ordered the seizure of a protected witness. I reject his mandate. Any guard who serves the kingdom rather than one frightened counselor may stand down without punishment. Boots sounded in the passages above. One by one, guard units lowered their weapons. Captain Vera rose and placed herself beside Nathan. The Eastern Guard stands with the princess. A voice answered through the palace speaking tubes. The Western Guard stands with the princess. Another followed. The Southern Wall stands with the princess. Malrek looked toward the council, but the nobles avoided his eyes. His mandate had given him control of the palace. Seraphine had reminded the palace who it belonged to. Nathan felt her strength increasing, yet he also felt the cost. The new power flowed through the covenant, and every heartbeat demanded balance. She could command shadows, awaken ancient wards, and strip authority from a regent, but she was still connected to a mortal body recovering from poison. If she pushed too far, Nathan's heart would bear part of the strain. She knew it. Her eyes found his across the corridor. "Do not tell me to stop," she said. "I was going to ask whether you can continue." "That is a better question." Malrek saw the exchange and understood the weakness. He drove the end of his staff into a circular seal carved beneath his feet. The silver light did not return. Instead, a hidden panel opened in the wall behind him. From it emerged a small black box marked with the crest of House Valor. Captain Vera went pale. "Where did you get that?" Malrek lifted the box with both hands. The Keeper's office was created for one purpose: to prevent the First Covenant from choosing the future of this kingdom. Seraphine's shadow wings narrowed around Nathan and Vera. That device was destroyed. One was destroyed. Malrek opened the box. Inside rested a clear crystal containing a moving thread of silver. Nathan's mark turned cold. Seraphine's power flickered, and every shadow in the corridor froze. Malrek looked directly at Nathan. Royal essence is not the only force that can cross a covenant. So can memory. He touched the crystal. A voice filled the corridor, faint at first, then unmistakably human. Nathan had not heard it since he was 19 years old, but he recognized it instantly. "Nathan," said Thomas Mercer, "if you are hearing this, then the vampire girl I saved has found you." Nathan could not move. Seraphine's crimson eyes widened as the message continued. "Do not let her tell you she does not remember me." The shadow wings vanished. Nathan turned toward Seraphine, and through the bond he felt the one emotion she had hidden from him since the beginning: guilt. For the first time since Nathan had met her, Seraphine looked afraid of him, not of what he might do, because he carried no weapon and possessed no power that could threaten her, but of what he might ask. The crystal in Lord Malrek's hand continued to glow as Thomas Mercer's recorded voice faded into silence, leaving the corridor filled with a truth no one seemed willing to touch. Nathan stared at Seraphine while the covenant between them tightened around his chest. Her guilt crossed into him like winter air through an open door. Beneath it lay grief, recognition, and a memory she had guarded for years. "You were the girl," Nathan said. Seraphine did not deny it. Captain Vera stepped between Malrek and the princess, blocking his view of Nathan. "This corridor is no longer secure." "Nothing in this palace is secure," Malrek replied. "Not while she hides the truth from the human whose life now carries her essence." Seraphine's eyes remained fixed on Nathan. "Give us the crystal." Malrek closed the black box. "The council will hear the complete testimony at moonrise." "That recording belongs to my family," Nathan said. "It belongs to the Keeper's archive," Malrek answered. "Your father understood that secrets have consequences. Perhaps his son will learn the same lesson." Nathan stepped toward him, but the bond reacted before Seraphine could. A wave of cold pressure moved through the corridor. The lamps flickered, the stone beneath Malrek's staff cracked with a thin line of crimson light, and Seraphine caught Nathan's wrist. Her touch stopped the reaction immediately. The sudden silence afterward felt more intimate than the chaos had. Her fingers remained around his wrist, cool and steady, while his pulse beat beneath them. "Do not let him decide when we speak," she said quietly. Nathan looked down at her hand. "You have had years to speak." The words hurt her. He felt that through the covenant, and the knowledge made his anger more complicated rather than less. Seraphine released him. "Captain, clear the corridor." Vera turned to the guards. "Escort the council to the western chamber. No one enters the eastern wing without my permission." Malrek gave a thin smile. "You cannot hide until the trial is over." "I am not hiding," Seraphine said. "I am choosing my witness." The guards moved cautiously, guiding the council away without touching Malrek. He allowed himself to be escorted, but his gaze remained on Nathan until the closing doors separated them. The moment he was gone, Seraphine's strength failed. She reached for the wall, and Nathan caught her by the forearm. The contact sent a sharp pulse through the covenant. His anger became hers. Her exhaustion became his. For one disorienting second, Nathan saw the corridor through her senses. Every heartbeat behind every door, every whispered conversation 3 floors above, every trace of silver hidden in the palace walls. Then the vision vanished, leaving him unsteady. Seraphine drew a careful breath. "The bond is becoming more sensitive." "That is convenient. You think I am using it to avoid your questions?" "I think every time I get close to an answer, someone explains why ancient law makes honesty difficult." She looked at him without royal distance. Then I will not use the law as an excuse. Captain Vera approached. The princess needs a protected room before the covenant surges again. Nathan almost laughed. Another sealed chamber? This one has windows. A remarkable improvement. Seraphine gave Vera a tired look. The moon garden. Vera hesitated. That room is private. That is why I chose it. They climbed from the archive through a narrow stairway that opened behind a carved panel in the eastern wing. The palace had changed since Nathan entered it as a clerk. Guards who once ignored him now watched with open curiosity. Servants lowered their heads to Seraphine, then looked at Nathan as if trying to decide whether he was a prisoner, a guest, or something the court had no name for. Seraphine walked without assistance, but Nathan remained close enough to catch her if necessary. He resented that he still cared. He resented even more that the bond made pretending otherwise impossible. The moon garden occupied the highest room in the eastern tower, nearly 100 feet above the palace courtyard. Its glass ceiling revealed a sky clearing after the storm. Silver clouds moved past a rising moon, and pale flowers grew in stone beds around a shallow pool. The room contained no throne, no royal banners, and no guards. Only a small table, 2 chairs, and an old wooden bench beside the window. Seraphine waited until Vera closed the door from outside. "No one enters unless I call," she ordered. "Even if the council demands it? Especially then." Nathan moved toward the glass wall and looked down at the city. Thousands of lights filled the valley, stretching from the palace gates to the distant river. Human districts burned with warm gold lamps. Vampire towers glowed in red and silver. From this height, the borders between them disappeared. "My father brought you to Willow Creek," he said. It was not a question. Seraphine stood near the pool, her reflection broken by the moving water. "I reached the river before dawn. I had been traveling for 6 nights without shelter. I was young by the standards of my people, wounded, frightened, and certain every human would see only what I was." "He hid you beneath the schoolhouse floor." "Yes." "Why were you alone?" "Because I had refused an order from my mother." Nathan turned toward her. "Queen Alara?" "No. Alara was my ancestor. My mother was Queen Leora Vale. She believed the border famine could be used to weaken the human provinces. Grain caravans were being delayed while both courts argued over taxes and territory. I discovered where the royal stores were being held and gave the route to human relief workers." Nathan remembered the winter his town nearly starved. "You helped the caravans through." "I tried. My mother called it betrayal. House Valor was ordered to bring me back before the court learned what I had done. I escaped them near Willow Creek. And my father protected you. He gave me food, a blanket, and a place to hide. He did not ask for payment. He did not ask whether the stories about my kind were true. He only asked whether I had harmed anyone. When I said no, he believed me." Seraphine lowered her gaze. "No one had ever believed me that easily." Nathan's anger sharpened. "Then why did you leave him there?" The question crossed the room like a blade made of words. Seraphine did not retreat from it. "Because he asked me to." "That does not make sense." "The militia returned. He knew they would search the schoolhouse again. He led me through an old drainage tunnel to the woods and told me to cross the river before sunrise. I wanted to remain. He said that if I stayed, the town would pay for protecting me." "So you left?" "Yes." Nathan's jaw tightened. "And when they arrested him?" "I returned 2 nights later." Her voice changed, becoming quieter. "He was already in custody. I went to the human magistrate and offered testimony. They refused to acknowledge me as a legal witness. I sent invoice. I offered gold. I threatened the border commander. Every action made his situation worse because they wanted proof that he had aided a royal vampire." Nathan had spent years imagining his father abandoned in a cell while officials ignored the truth. Now another image forced its way beside it. Seraphine outside the gates, powerful enough to terrify a city, yet powerless to make human law recognize her words. "You could have broken him out." "Yes." "Why did you not?" "Because Thomas refused." Nathan stared at her. Seraphine moved to the wooden bench and sat, not like a princess granting an audience, but like someone carrying a weight too old to stand beneath. "He sent me one message through a guard. He said that if I used force, every vampire refugee in the northern settlements would be hunted. He believed his death would become an excuse for mercy if I allowed the truth to surface slowly. It did not." "No." Her answer held centuries of bitterness. His death became a line in a sealed report. The girl he saved became a princess who learned that powerful people can bury kindness more easily than crimes. Nathan looked away, unable to decide whether he wanted distance from her or from his own memories. The Covenant refused to give him either. Her grief pressed against his heart. His anger moved through hers. The emotions met between them until neither could tell where one ended. You remembered his name, Nathan said. Every day. You knew who I was when I entered the court. Not at first. Mercer is not an uncommon name. Then I saw the way you watched the council. You tilted your head exactly as he did when someone lied badly. Nathan let out a breath that held no humor. So you investigated me. I requested your service record. And found what? A man who spent 12 years trying to prove that quiet decency could survive institutions built to reward cruelty. Her eyes met his. I should have told you before the ceremony. Why did you not? Because I was afraid you would look at me and see the reason your father died. Nathan stepped closer. Were you? Yes. The direct answer stopped him. No defense. No careful royal language. House Vaylor hunted me. The militia arrested him because of me. My choices placed him in danger. His choices placed him in danger too. That does not absolve me. No, but it matters. Seraphine looked down at her hands. The mark on her palm had dimmed to a faint red line. He told me something before I left Willow Creek. He said that guilt often disguises itself as responsibility because responsibility feels nobler. I hated him for saying it because I knew he was right. Nathan sat at the opposite end of the bench, leaving several feet between them. The distance made the bond ache. Not physically, but like a conversation interrupted before the important words. Why did my father record that message? I do not know. I never heard it before tonight. He said the vampire girl had found me. Then he expected this. Or feared it. The mark above Nathan's heart pulsed. Seraphine's hand tightened. Your heartbeat is changing. You can feel that. Only when it becomes irregular. That is not unsettling at all. I could pretend not to notice. Would that help? No. He looked at her, and for the first time there was no court between them, no ceremony, and no audience demanding that each of them perform a role. The woman beside him had lived for centuries, commanded armies, and awakened the shadows of an ancient palace. Yet in that moment, she seemed less dangerous than the truth she was offering him. Nathan slowly extended his hand across the space between them. Seraphine watched it, but did not move. This is not forgiveness, he said. I would not accept forgiveness you do not mean. It is not trust either. Then what is it? A test. She placed her hand in his. Her skin was cool, but the contact sent warmth through the covenant. The ache disappeared. Their breathing settled into the same rhythm. Nathan saw a memory that was not his. A younger Seraphine beneath a schoolhouse floor, wrapped in his father's brown coat, while footsteps crossed the boards above. She was trembling, not from hunger, but from the belief that Thomas would surrender her. Instead, his voice came through the wood, calm and stubborn. There is no monster here, he told the militia. Only frightened people making choices they will have to live with. The memory changed. Thomas stood beside the river before dawn, older than Nathan remembered him, his hand resting on Seraphine's shoulder. Find something worth protecting, he said. Then protect it without becoming the thing it needs protection from. Nathan released her hand. The vision vanished, but one detail remained. His father had worn the silver key around his neck, the same key Nathan had found in the Covenant archive. You saw it, Seraphine whispered. The key. He had it before you reached Willow Creek. A hidden mechanism clicked beneath the bench. Nathan and Seraphine both stood. A narrow compartment opened in the wall beside them, revealing an old human letter sealed with Thomas Mercer's name. Seraphine stared at it. This room answers only to my blood. Nathan reached toward the letter, but the crimson marks on their hands flared together. The seal opened by itself. Thomas's voice emerged once more, clearer than before. Nathan, if Seraphine has brought you to the Moon Garden, then she has finally told you the truth. Now you must tell her yours. You did not come to the Crimson Court only to find my records. You came because someone paid you to watch the princess. The letter fell silent, but the accusation remained in the Moon Garden as if Thomas Mercer himself had spoken it from the empty air. Seraphine did not step away from Nathan. That made the moment worse. Her hand stayed near the faint mark in her palm, her expression controlled, while the covenant between them carried everything she refused to show. Surprise, disappointment, and the first sharp edge of doubt. Nathan looked at the open compartment, then at the pale flowers surrounding the pool. I did not know my father had recorded that. That is not what he asked you to explain, Seraphine said. Her voice was quiet. Nathan had heard her command guards, silence counselors, and awaken the ancient palace. None of those voices had unsettled him as much as this one. The human ministry paid me to observe you, he said. The bond tightened. Seraphine's crimson eyes remained on his face. Observe me for what purpose? They said the peace negotiations were unstable. They wanted a private assessment of your intentions, your relationship with the council, and the likelihood that you would support human settlements if the treaty failed. That is the work of a political informant. Yes. The single word crossed the distance between them. Nathan could have softened it. He could have called himself a clerk following instructions or a junior official with no power to refuse. Instead, he gave her the truth without protection. How long, she asked. Since I accepted the assignment 6 months ago. Before you entered my court. Yes. Before you stepped in front of the silver blade. Yes. Seraphine looked toward the city below. The moonlight turned her face almost colorless, but Nathan felt the heat of her anger through the mark over his heart. Did they tell you to earn my trust? They told me to remain unnoticed. Did they tell you to search the archives for information about my family? No, that part was mine. And your father's records? Also mine. She closed her eyes for a moment. Every answer is honest, and none of them make this easier. Nathan moved toward the table, but stopped before coming too close. I sent 3 reports before the ceremony. The first described the council divisions. The second warned that Lord Malrek was gathering emergency authority. The third said you were not planning an attack against the human border. Seraphine opened her eyes. What did you write about me? That you carried more responsibility than authority. That the council used your restraint as proof of weakness. That you protected human districts even when your own nobles opposed it. Did you mention Willow Creek? I did not know the truth about Willow Creek. Did you mention the way I looked at you? Nathan was silent. The bond betrayed him. Seraphine turned from the window. You did. I wrote that you recognized my family name. And what conclusion did the ministry draw? They instructed me to remain near you. Her expression hardened. So when you stood beside the treaty table, when you watched the balcony, when you warned me, you were exactly where they wanted you to be. I was there because my position required it. Your position as a clerk or your position as their observer? Both. The answer hurt them equally. Nathan felt it move across the covenant, a pressure beneath the ribs. Seraphine crossed the room and picked up the letter. Thomas Mercer's seal had disappeared, replaced by the divided circle of the first covenant. My blood opened this message, she said. Your presence completed it. Your father designed every secret to require both of us. He may have known the covenant would return. Then he knew what it would cost. She turned the letter over. More writing appeared on the reverse side, silver at first, then darkening into modern English. Nathan read the words aloud. The first covenant is not a debt of blood. It is a claim of mutual witness. The royal does not own the mortal, and the mortal does not serve the royal. Each becomes the living proof of the other's truth. Seraphine moved closer. That is not the law Malrek read in the archive. Because the official version was changed. The moon garden answered him. Symbols appeared beneath the surface of the pool, spreading in circles of crimson and silver. The water rose without spilling, shaping itself into 2 figures. One wore the crown of Queen Ilara Vale. The other was Daniel Mercer. Their hands were joined above the same mark carried by Nathan and Seraphine. A voice emerged from the water, old but clear. When one life is freely placed before another, the covenant creates no master and no subject. It creates a witness whose word cannot be erased by throne, council, or crown. Seraphine stared at the figures. That is why the keeper's office feared it. Nathan understood. A bonded witness can challenge royal history. More than challenge it. Confirm it. The figures dissolved, and new words appeared across the pool. Blood recognizes blood. Truth recognizes choice. Before the first moon reaches its height, the witnesses must speak freely before the court. If either conceals the truth, both marks will fade. If either is compelled, the throne will reject the verdict. If both choose the bond, no law may separate them without their consent. Nathan read the final line twice. No law may separate them. Seraphine's gaze moved to him. That is the consequence Malrek hid. The council cannot order the bond severed. Not if we accept it freely. And if we do not, the royal essence returns to me. Your body loses the protection that saved you. Nathan felt the meaning settle over the room. The bond was not merely an accidental connection or a temporary exchange of strength. It had become a decision with a deadline. In 7 nights, they would stand before the court and either recognize each other as permanent witnesses or separate under terms that might cost Nathan his life. There is more, Seraphine said. She placed her marked palm above the pool. The water brightened and revealed a second passage. The mortal witness shall hold the right of refusal over any royal command that endangers the innocent. The royal witness shall hold the right of protection over any force that seeks to silence the mortal. Neither right may be transferred. Nathan looked at her. That would make me part of the government. It would make you a limit upon the throne. The council would never accept that. The council does not have to accept ancient law. It only has to survive it. For the first time since Thomas's accusation, a faint trace of humor entered her voice, but it faded quickly. Nathan looked at the glowing city. The ministry knew. Perhaps not everything. They knew enough to send me. Seraphine studied him through the bond, not searching his thoughts, but measuring the shape of his certainty. Who recruited you? Deputy Minister Adrian Cross. Her expression changed immediately. Cross negotiated with House Vaylor 3 years ago. He told me the talks failed. They did not fail. They were suspended after someone attempted to purchase restricted silver from the Northern Armory. Nathan remembered the narrow blade, the dead crest, and the assassin selected to force Seraphine into invoking the covenant. Cross knew House Vaylor was still active. He may have helped keep it active. The truth drew the separate mysteries together. Nathan's placement in the delegation, the sealed archives, the restored crest, and Malrek's prepared device were not isolated events. Someone in the human ministry and someone inside the Crimson Court had shaped the same trap from opposite sides. They needed Seraphine weakened, Nathan bound to her, and both of them too suspicious of each other to stand together before the trial. Nathan reached into the inner pocket of the black shirt the healer had given him. The coat was gone, but one object remained, a thin brass token engraved with the seal of the human ministry. Cross had told him it identified him to confidential contacts. Nathan had never used it. He placed it on the table. Under moonlight, a second engraving appeared beneath the ministry seal. House Vaylor. Seraphine did not look surprised. That frightened him more than shock would have. The token was tracking you, she said, or guiding the assassin. Nathan touched the edge of it. The covenant mark pulsed, and the brass token opened like a small mechanical flower. A strip of paper rested inside with a message written in Cross's hand. If the princess survives, ensure she invokes royal protection. Once the bond forms, the keeper will take control. Nathan felt the room tilt beneath him. I carried this into the palace. You did not know. That does not change what it allowed them to do. Intent matters. Tell that to the court. I intend to. Seraphine picked up the token and closed it inside her hand. The brass darkened, but she did not destroy it. This is evidence. It is also proof that I was part of their plan. You were used by their plan. There may not be a difference to your nobles. There is a difference to me. Nathan looked at her. After everything you just learned? Especially after everything I learned. She stepped closer until only a few inches separated them. The bond warmed, no longer painful, but impossibly clear. You told me the truth when lying would have protected you. You admitted the reports. You admitted the payment. You placed the evidence in my hand before I asked for it. That does not erase your choices, Nathan, but it reveals them. You should not trust me yet. I do not. The answer was immediate. But I believe you are capable of earning it. He almost smiled. That is not the reassurance you think it is. It was not intended as reassurance. Her hand closed around the brass token. It was a challenge. The moon garden doors opened. Captain Vera entered with 2 guards, both visibly tense. Your Highness, the Blood Council has called an emergency assembly. Lord Malrek claims the human witness entered the court under false authority. Nathan glanced at Seraphine. He moved quickly. Fear is often efficient, she said. Vera looked toward the glowing pool. There is another problem. The human delegation received a message from Deputy Minister Cross. He has ordered Nathan's immediate return. On what grounds? Nathan asked. Treason. Seraphine's expression became still. Vera continued. Cross claims you abandoned your assignment, concealed contact with a foreign royal, and allowed yourself to be bound by hostile blood law. Human guards are waiting at the northern gate. Nathan looked at the ministry token in Seraphine's hand. The trap had reached its final shape. If he returned, Cross could silence him before the trial. If he stayed, the human ministry would brand him a traitor and use his presence to break the treaty. Seraphine turned toward Vera. Inform the council that the witness will appear at moonrise. And the human delegation? Tell them Nathan Mercer remains under the protection of the First Covenant. Nathan felt the consequences of those words travel outward through the palace. Royal protection was not courtesy. It was a public claim that any attempt to seize him would be treated as an attempt to silence the throne's chosen witness. Seraphine, he said, that could start a war. She met his gaze. Then we will give both courts one chance to choose truth instead. The moonlight brightened around the marks on their hands. A new symbol appeared between them, not a chain and not a crown, but two open eyes facing opposite directions. Captain Vera lowered her head. The Covenant has named its consequence. Nathan looked at the symbol. What does it mean? Seraphine's answer was almost a whisper. It means that until the trial ends, every lie spoken about one of us will be felt by the other. At that exact moment, pain flashed through the mark above Nathan's heart. Somewhere below, before the assembled court, Lord Malrek had begun speaking. Seraphine felt it too. She lifted her chin as the palace bells announced moonrise. He has told them you planned the attack, she said. Nathan opened the moon garden door. Then it is time the court heard what I was truly paid to do. The throne hall had been built to make every visitor feel small, but on the night of the emergency assembly, even the nobles seemed diminished by the weight of what waited above them. Nearly 400 members of the Crimson Court filled the black marble tiers surrounding the central floor. Clan leaders stood beneath banners stitched with silver thread. Military commanders occupied the eastern gallery. Human diplomats gathered behind a narrow brass railing on the western side, guarded by officers who wore the blue and gray uniforms of the human ministry. At the far end of the chamber, the obsidian throne remained empty. Lord Malrek stood before it with the keeper's staff in one hand and the sealed black box containing Thomas Mercer's message in the other. Nathan felt the first lie before he heard it. Pain moved through the Covenant like a cold wire beneath his ribs as Malrek addressed the court. The human witness entered this palace under false authority, concealed his service to a foreign intelligence office, and manipulated the princess into invoking forbidden law. Seraphine felt the same pain. She did not slow as they crossed the upper balcony with Captain Vera behind them. The divided symbol between their marks had made every public falsehood physically undeniable, but only to the two people the court least wanted to believe. Nathan looked down at the assembled faces. Some watched him with suspicion. Some watched Seraphine with disappointment. Others appeared almost eager, as though scandal had finally made the ancient court interesting again. They have already decided what they want the truth to be, Nathan said quietly. Then we will make them hear what it is, Seraphine replied. The great doors opened before them. Every voice in the hall disappeared. Seraphine entered without crown, armor, or visible royal essence. Nathan walked beside her in a plain black shirt and borrowed court coat. He could feel the nobles measuring the distance between them. A human clerk was expected to follow a royal vampire at least 12 feet behind. Nathan remained at her side. That small refusal of protocol caused more alarm than any display of magic. Lord Malrek lifted his staff. Seraphine Vale, you appear before the Blood Council without recognized authority. I appear as a named participant in the trial of 3 truths, she answered. The court is required to hear me. The court will hear you after the foreign agent is detained. Nathan stepped onto the circular floor beneath the empty throne. My name is Nathan Mercer. You have used the phrase foreign agent 6 times since sunset. You may use my name at least once. A ripple of disapproval moved through the vampire tiers. Deputy Minister Adrian Cross stood behind the human railing, dressed in a dark blue formal coat decorated with the gold seal of his office. He was a tall, silver-haired man whose public reputation rested on calm speeches and careful compromise. Nathan had once admired him. Now the brass token-bearing House Valer's hidden crest rested inside Seraphine's hand. Cross looked at Nathan with the distant disappointment of a teacher examining a failed student. Mr. Mercer, the ministry orders you to return to human custody. Under what legal charge? abandonment of duty, concealment of foreign influence, and suspected collaboration in an attack against a diplomatic assembly. The covenant mark burned. Cross had lied. Nathan pressed one hand against his chest, but remained standing. Seraphine's eyes brightened in response to the same pain. The bond recognizes false testimony, she said. Malrek turned toward the court. A bond created under manipulation cannot judge truth. Then why are you afraid to let it speak? Nathan asked. Malrek ignored him and gestured toward the highest tier. The recognized clans will present their objections. Lady Aurelia of the Frost bloodline rose first. Her white robes shimmered beneath the candlelight, and her voice carried the polished contempt of someone who had never needed to defend her place in the world. A mortal cannot hold refusal over the throne. Humans live brief lives governed by fear, ambition, and changing loyalties. To let one human limit royal command is to place centuries of order in hands that will become dust before our youngest heirs reach maturity. Nathan looked up at her. A short life does not make a conscience less valuable. It makes judgment temporary. All judgment is temporary. That is why laws are supposed to be examined. Several younger nobles whispered among themselves. Lady Aurelia's expression tightened. The leader of the Iron Fang clan rose next. Lord Cashin was broad-shouldered, severe, and old enough that the medals on his formal armor represented wars no human historian remembered. The greater danger is not mortality. It is dependence. The princess has allowed a human heartbeat to influence her power. What happens when human officials threaten him? What happens when they demand territory in exchange for his safety? A royal who possesses a single point of emotional failure is no longer sovereign. Seraphine faced him. Every ruler has points of failure. Most hide them behind soldiers and call that strength. You admit he is your weakness. I admit he matters. Those are not the same thing. The answer moved through the hall with dangerous force. Nathan felt the social pressure sharpen around them. The nobles did not fear romance, loyalty, or even affection. They feared public choice. A princess could secretly value a human and remain respectable. She could not stand before the court and declare that his life carried weight equal to vampire law. Lord Cashin turned to Nathan. Would you surrender yourself if your death preserved peace between our peoples? Nathan felt Seraphine's immediate refusal through the bond, but he answered before she could speak. That depends on whether my death would truly preserve peace or merely protect the people who created the crisis. You evade the question. No. I reject the assumption that sacrifice is automatically noble because powerful people request it. A murmur spread through the human gallery. Cross stepped forward. Mr. Mercer has become confused by prolonged exposure to royal influence. Pain crossed the covenant again. This time Nathan expected it. Seraphine did not. Her hand closed around the brass token until its hidden mechanism clicked. Deputy Minister Cross, she said. Did you order Nathan to observe me before he entered the palace? Cross remained calm. He was assigned routine diplomatic reporting duties. The mark burned more intensely. Nathan saw Seraphine's shoulders tense. Did you know House Valor remained active? She asked. House Valor was dissolved more than 100 years ago. Another lie. Several candles above the human gallery went out. The court noticed. Malrek struck his staff against the floor. The assembly will not be governed by theatrical reactions from an unstable bond. Captain Vera stepped forward. Then permit ordinary evidence. She held up the brass token with silver tongs and placed it on the central table. The visible side displayed the human ministry seal. When she turned it over, the crest of House Valor appeared beneath the moonlight. Shock moved through the vampire clans. 3 nobles immediately left their seats. One of them belonged to the southern houses that had once supported Valor. Malrek watched them go, but did not order the doors closed. Nathan understood why. Their departure was not fear. It was preparation. The opposition extended beyond a single counselor. That token was issued to me by Deputy Minister Cross, Nathan said. Cross looked toward the human guards. The object has been altered inside the palace. Seraphine opened her hand and revealed the written instruction hidden within it. Your handwriting ordered Nathan to ensure I invoked royal protection. Would you like the court scribes to compare it with the treaty documents you signed this morning? Cross's composure finally shifted. Any competent forger could reproduce my hand. The covenant delivered another pulse of pain. This time a faint symbol appeared in the air between Nathan and Seraphine, visible to the entire hall. Two open eyes burned crimson for 1 second, then vanished. The assembly erupted into whispers. Malrek raised his voice. The symbol proves only that the bonded pair reject his statement. It does not establish objective truth. Then bring the palace truth mirror, Seraphine said. Silence returned. Nathan had never heard of such an object, but Malrek's expression told him it existed. Lady Aurelia lowered her gaze. Lord Cashin shifted in his seat. Cross looked toward the doors. The truth mirror has not been used in 2 centuries, Malrek said. Because the council decided it was too dangerous, Seraphine replied. Dangerous to whom? No one answered. Captain Vera ordered 2 guards to retrieve it from the western vault. Malrek blocked their path with his staff. The keeper must approve access. The trial of 3 truths outranks the keeper's mandate, Seraphine said. Unless you intend to challenge the law you claim to protect. Malrek's eyes moved across the court. He could refuse and reveal fear, or obey and risk exposure. Before he decided, the northern doors opened. A delegation entered beneath a banner Nathan had seen only in forbidden history books. A black field divided by a silver crown. House Vaylor had arrived. Their leader was a woman with pale gold hair, dark red eyes, and a ceremonial veil covering the lower half of her face. She wore no armor. She carried no visible weapon. Yet the oldest council members rose as if an ancient threat had walked out of a grave. Lady Myrina Vaylor, Seraphine said. The woman bowed with perfect courtesy. Princess. Malrek stepped toward her. Your house has no standing in this court. Then your guards should not have opened the gates. Myrina's gaze settled on Nathan. So this is Thomas Mercer's son. Nathan felt Seraphine's alarm through the bond. You knew my father? He asked. I knew what he prevented. Myrina walked to the edge of the central circle. 700 years ago, Daniel Mercer and Queen Alara used the First Covenant to expose a plan by the council to prolong the War of Ash. The Keeper's office rewrote the law, erased Daniel from human history, and forced the Covenant into silence. Thomas Mercer discovered the surviving record 19 years ago. He intended to reveal it. Nathan's throat tightened. He was arrested before he could. Yes. Did House Vaylor arrange that? Myrina did not answer immediately. The Covenant remained quiet, because silence was not yet a lie. My house tried to recover the key he carried, she said at last. The human militia acted with information supplied by one of our agents. Thomas was not meant to die, but powerful people often describe consequences as accidents when they do not wish to accept responsibility. Seraphine moved in front of Nathan. Her weakened royal essence flickered around her like crimson mist. You used his father, then used him. Myrina's eyes narrowed with something close to regret. We guided Nathan to the palace because the Covenant required a Mercer witness. We arranged the opportunity. We did not control his choice. You placed the silver blade in the assassin's hand, Nathan said. A blade designed to trigger the law without causing lasting harm to the princess. The hall recoiled. Nathan remembered the cold entering his own body. It nearly killed me. You were not expected to intercept it. Then you did not know me as well as you believed. Cross moved toward the exit while the court's attention remained on Myrina. Captain Vera noticed and signaled the guards. The human officers blocked them. In an instant, the throne hall divided into visible loyalties. Crimson guards around Seraphine, human officers around Cross, Vaylor nobles near the northern doors, and council clans filling the tiers above. No one raised a weapon, but every person understood how little distance remained between accusation and disaster. Malrek lifted the keeper's staff. This assembly proves the danger. A compromised princess, a foreign witness, a resurrected traitor clan, and human officials accusing one another under our roof. The court must restore order immediately. By silencing everyone except you? Nathan asked. By separating the bond before it tears 2 kingdoms apart. The bond did not create this division. It revealed it. Malrek looked toward the council tiers. Then let the clans vote. Those who believe Seraphine Vale should retain protection over the human witness may remain seated. Those who believe Nathan Mercer must be surrendered to neutral custody will stand. Seats shifted throughout the hall. One noble rose, then another. Entire clan delegations followed. Human officials watched from behind their railing. Vaylor remained still. Nathan counted as the opposition grew. Nearly 2/3 of the recognized clans stood against them. Seraphine felt the result through his heartbeat. "They will declare me unfit," she said quietly, "and order me returned to Cross. I will not permit that. You may lose the throne." She turned to him. "The throne is not worth preserving if it requires me to become the kind of ruler my father warned your family against." Malrek raised his staff to announce the vote, but Nathan stepped into the center of the circle. He possessed no supernatural strength, no ancient title, and no army prepared to obey him. His only authority came from the fact that every powerful person in the room wanted him silent. "Before the council decides where I belong," he said, "I invoke the mortal witness's right under the original covenant." Malrek's face changed. "You do not know how to invoke that right." Nathan held up the silver key. "My family did." The key began to glow. Somewhere beneath the throne, a mechanism awakened with a deep sound that shook dust from the black marble. The empty obsidian seat divided at its center, revealing a hidden staircase descending into red light. An inscription appeared across the floor before every clan, counselor, and diplomat. "Let the witness reveal what the crown concealed." Nathan looked toward the gathered court. "You wanted proof that I have value beyond the life Seraphine saved. Come with me, and I will show you why both governments were willing to build a conspiracy around an ordinary human name." The staircase beneath the throne descended farther than the palace foundations should have allowed, and with every step Nathan felt the noise of the court fade until only the steady rhythm of his own breathing remained. Seraphine walked beside him, her weakened power casting a faint crimson glow across the narrow walls. Captain Vera followed several steps behind, while Lord Malrek, Deputy Minister Cross, Lady Myrina Vaylor, and representatives from the major clans came after them under the watch of both human and vampire guards. No one spoke. The inscription on the throne hall floor had invited the court to witness what the crown concealed, but the passage was barely wide enough for two people. Rank offered no advantage there. Ancient nobles, military commanders, and government ministers were forced into a single line behind an ordinary human clerk. The stairs ended before a circular bronze door marked with hundreds of handprints. Some were large, others small, and many belonged to species Nathan did not recognize. At the center was a keyhole shaped like the silver key in his hand. Malrek pushed forward. "The keeper must open any chamber beneath the throne." The mark above Nathan's heart remained quiet. Malrek believed what he said, but belief did not make it true. Nathan inserted the key. Nothing happened. Myrina Vaylor watched him from beneath her ceremonial veil. Daniel Mercer opened it with his blood. Seraphine's expression hardened. "No one will ask Nathan for blood." "I did not ask," Myrina replied. "I stated history." Nathan examined the door instead of the people surrounding him. His father had taught him that old builders rarely hid answers. They hid questions. The handprints were not arranged by size, species, or rank. They formed concentric circles around the keyhole, and each print pointed inward as though many people were holding the same object together. Nathan placed his palm against the empty space beside the key. The bronze warmed. Seraphine understood and placed her marked hand opposite his. The door opened without blood, revealing a chamber nearly 80 feet across. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness. Thousands of glass cylinders stood in narrow shelves rising from the floor, each containing a small light that moved like a captured memory. A long table divided the room. One side bore the symbols of the vampire throne. The other carried the seal of the earliest human council. At the center stood two plain wooden chairs. No crowns, no ceremonial weapons, no place reserved for a keeper. "The Hall of Witnesses," Seraphine whispered. Malrek's face lost its certainty. "This chamber was destroyed after the War of Ash." "No," Nathan said. "It was hidden beneath the authority that claimed to replace it." The court entered slowly. As each person crossed the threshold, one of the glass cylinders brightened. Voices began whispering from the shelves, hundreds at first, then thousands, speaking in human languages and ancient vampire dialects. They were not speeches from kings or generals. They were the testimonies of farmers, teachers, nurses, servants, border guards, messengers, and children who had lived through wars created by people whose names filled official histories. Nathan moved toward the nearest cylinder. Inside, a human woman described opening her barn to vampire families during a winter evacuation. The next held the memory of a vampire physician who treated human miners during a fever outbreak. Another preserved the testimony of 2 soldiers from opposing armies who refused orders to destroy a village. The hidden history of the kingdom was not a record of endless hatred. It was a record of ordinary people repeatedly choosing mercy while their rulers claimed peace was impossible. Nathan thought of Thomas Mercer standing above a schoolhouse floor and telling armed men there was no monster beneath it. His father had not acted outside history. He had continued it. Cross approached a shelf marked with the Human Ministry seal. These records belong under human jurisdiction. Lady Aurelia answered from across the chamber. They concern vampire citizens. They contain classified human orders. They also contain evidence of crimes committed against my clan. Voices rose around the room. Clan leaders demanded access to particular shelves. Human officers called for the chamber to be sealed. Members of House Valor moved toward the oldest records, while Malrek ordered everyone to return upstairs until the keeper could establish control. The whispers in the glass cylinders grew louder as the argument intensified. Nathan noticed lines of pale light spreading across the floor. They connected every shelf to the 2 wooden chairs. The archive was reacting not to authority, but to conflict. "Stop moving," he said. No one listened. A vampire counselor reached for one of the cylinders. The light inside vanished, and an entire row of memories dimmed with it. Nathan raised his voice. "If you continue claiming these records before the chamber recognizes a witness, you will erase them." That silenced the room. Malrek looked at the darkened shelf. "How could you know that?" "Because this is an archive, not a treasure vault. It was designed to preserve testimony from people whom governments considered inconvenient. It would protect itself from anyone entering with the intention to possess the truth." Nathan walked to the 2 wooden chairs. On the table before them lay a narrow book with blank pages. When he touched the cover, writing appeared. "One witness shall speak for the crown. One witness shall speak for those beneath it. Neither may command the other." Myrina turned to Seraphine. "Take the royal chair." Seraphine did not move. "My blood right was removed. Your bond restored another form of power. That does not make me the correct witness." Malrek stepped toward the chair bearing the royal symbol. "The keeper speaks for the continuity of the throne." Nathan looked at the untouched glass cylinders around him. That is exactly why the keeper cannot sit there. This room was hidden because continuity became more important than truth. Several guards shifted uneasily. Malrek's hand tightened around his staff. "You stand in a court you do not understand and judge institutions older than your nation. Age explains an institution. It does not excuse it." Lord Cashin moved toward the second chair. "Then let a clan commander speak for the people who defended this kingdom." "You defended the kingdom," Nathan said. "That is not the same as speaking for everyone beneath the throne." "And you believe a human clerk can?" "No." Nathan placed the silver key on the table. "That is the difference." The room became still. He looked at the nobles, officers, servants, human diplomats, and members of the clan that had manipulated his path to the palace. Every person here wants these records to prove something already decided. House Valor wants proof that the council betrayed them. The council wants proof that rebellion caused the wars. The Human Ministry wants proof that vampires cannot be trusted. The clans want the names of enemies. Lord Malrek wants the archive controlled. "I want proof that my father's death mattered." His voice tightened on the final sentence, but he did not look away. "That desire does not make me worthy. It makes me dangerous in exactly the same way as the rest of you." Seraphine felt the truth of his confession through the covenant. Her hand rose toward the mark in her palm. Cross studied Nathan with open disbelief. "You have access to evidence that could clear your name, and you refuse to claim it?" "I refuse to turn thousands of lives into tools for clearing mine." The blank book opened. New words appeared across its first page. "The witness acknowledges his hunger. Let him name what must be protected from him." Nathan looked across the glowing shelves. He understood the test. The archive did not need a perfect man. It needed someone aware of the damage a righteous person could cause while believing himself justified. "The names," he said. "Protect the names of ordinary witnesses. Reveal the orders issued by institutions, the funds transferred, the laws altered, and the officials who acted with public authority. But conceal refugees, servants, families, and anyone whose descendants could be punished for private acts of mercy." Myrina's eyes narrowed. "Some of those names identify the agents who betrayed my house. Then prosecute living officials with evidence of their choices. Do not punish grandchildren for secrets inherited from the dead. Lady Aurelia stepped forward. The court has a right to know which bloodlines aided humans. The court has a responsibility not to turn compassion into a hereditary crime. Nathan looked toward the human delegation. The same protection applies to vampires hidden by human families. No government receives a list of people to threaten. Cross's voice became cold. You do not possess authority to establish those terms. Then why did both governments work so hard to place me here? The Covenant mark remained calm. Nathan spoke without pride, and that made the question impossible to dismiss. The book turned another page. The mortal witness has chosen limits over dominion. The first chair is recognized. A soft light surrounded the plain wooden seat on the side of the table marked for those beneath the throne. Nathan did not sit. Instead, he looked at Seraphine. The second witness must be chosen freely. Malrek raised his staff. The royal chair belongs to the lawful throne. The archive answered him before anyone else could. Every cylinder associated with the keeper's office darkened. In their place, a single memory appeared above the table. Daniel Mercer stood beside Queen Alara in the same chamber 700 years earlier. They looked exhausted, surrounded by counselors who demanded access to the archive. Daniel spoke first. The value of a witness is not that he can expose his enemies. It is that he refuses to become them when the truth gives him the chance. Queen Alara placed her crown on the table. Then let the throne be witnessed only by one willing to lose it. The memory faded. Everyone turned toward Seraphine. She looked at the royal chair, but did not approach it. If I sit there, the archive may recognize me as ruler. Yes, Malrek said immediately, and the crisis ends. Nathan felt the warning through their bond. Seraphine did too. No, she said. The crisis changes its clothing. She faced the assembled clans. If this room restores my title before the court learns the truth, every revelation will be dismissed as a weapon I used to regain power. Nathan saw what she was doing. She was refusing the reward he had nearly died to protect. The archive had tested him with vindication. It was testing her with authority. Cross moved toward the exit. This exercise has no standing under human law. Nathan noticed the glass cylinder nearest him brighten. Inside was Cross's voice giving instructions to a hidden contact from House Vaylor. The recording was clear enough for everyone to hear. Place Mercer near the princess. His family history makes intervention likely. Once the Covenant activates, Malrek will isolate them, and both courts will accept emergency rule. Human officers stared at Cross. Clan leaders turned toward Malrek. The two men did not look at each other. They did not need to. Their silence confirmed cooperation more effectively than any confession. The archive began illuminating records across the chamber. Payments from the human ministry to Vaylor agents, sealed council orders restoring the dead house's access to the palace, and messages discussing how public fear could be used to suspend the treaty. Nathan could have stood aside and allowed the room to turn against them. Instead, he stepped between Cross and the gathering human officers. No one touches him. Captain Vera looked at Nathan in surprise. He arranged the conditions that nearly killed you. Then he will answer before both courts, with every record preserved and every question heard. If we punish him here because we are angry, the people upstairs will receive another story about monsters and traitors. I will not give him that escape. Cross stared at Nathan. You are protecting me? I am protecting the truth from becoming revenge. The final words had barely left his mouth when every glass cylinder in the chamber ignited with warm golden light. The whispers became one unified sound, not loud, but vast enough to make the floor tremble. The book turned to its final written page. The mortal witness has proven strength without dominion, courage without cruelty, and mercy without blindness. Let the throne choose whether it is worthy to stand beside him. The royal chair moved away from Malrek and stopped before Seraphine. She looked at Nathan across the table, and the Covenant carried something deeper than gratitude. It carried recognition. Before she could accept the chair, an alarm bell sounded from the palace above. Captain Vera pressed one hand to the communication seal at her collar. Her expression changed as a message reached her. The northern clans have surrounded the human district, she said. They demand Nathan's surrender before dawn. Another guard received a message through the palace speaking tube. Human forces are gathering beyond the river. Deputy Minister Cross sent them orders before entering the assembly. Cross looked toward the sealed door. Those units will act if I do not countermand the order. Nathan stepped away from him, then countermanded it. My command seal is in the throne hall. Malrek lifted the keeper's staff, and the palace gates answer to me. The chamber lights dimmed around him. He smiled without triumph, only certainty. You have proven that you are a good man, Nathan Mercer. Now you will learn why good men rarely decide how kingdoms survive. Above them, the warning bells changed from alarm to mobilization. Seraphine placed one hand on the royal chair, but her eyes stayed on Nathan. The archive had given her a path back to the throne. The kingdom had given her a choice between claiming it and reaching the human district before both armies arrived. Nathan felt her decision forming through the bond, fierce and immediate, before she spoke a single word. Seraphine removed her hand from the royal chair. The archive's golden light dimmed as though the chamber itself understood what she had chosen. Lord Malrek watched her with quiet satisfaction, believing she had surrendered the only path back to the throne. But Nathan felt the truth through the covenant before she spoke. She was not surrendering power. She was deciding what power was for. Captain Vera, Seraphine said, open the eastern passage to the human district. Vera looked toward Malrek's staff. The palace gates answer to the keeper's mandate. Then we will not use the palace gates. Seraphine turned to the wall of glowing memories. This archive existed before the palace was built. It protected witnesses during the War of Ash. There must be another way out. Nathan followed her gaze across the shelves. Several cylinders near the northern wall showed farmers and refugees moving through underground tunnels beneath the city. A repeated symbol appeared in each memory, two open hands beneath a divided moon. He carried the silver key to the wall and pressed it against the symbol. Stone folded inward, revealing a narrow passage filled with cold night air. Captain Vera stepped forward. That tunnel reaches the old river quarter, less than half a mile from the human district. Malrek raised his staff. Seraphine Vale, if you leave this chamber during a council mobilization, you will be abandoning your claim. She looked at him. I am abandoning nothing except your definition of leadership. The throne is the only authority capable of stopping the clans. No, the throne is the authority you taught them to obey. I intend to remind them whom they were supposed to protect. Nathan moved beside her. The northern clans demanded my surrender. If I appear in the district, I may become the reason they advance. You are not the reason. You are the excuse. That distinction will not comfort frightened families. Then we will give them something stronger than comfort. Her eyes held his. We will give them protection they can see. Cross stepped toward the table. If you take me to the throne hall, I can retrieve my command seal and stop the human forces. Captain Vera blocked him. You sent those forces before the assembly, and I can call them back. After you regain access to your officers and destroy the evidence? Nathan asked. Cross's expression remained controlled, but the archive lights around him flickered. You need me. We need your authority, Nathan said. That is not the same thing. He looked toward the human ministry records glowing on the shelves. The archive preserved your original command. It may also preserve the authorization pattern attached to it. Cross understood immediately. You cannot reproduce a ministry seal. I do not intend to reproduce it. I intend to expose it. Nathan placed his hand on the nearest cylinder containing Cross's voice. The memory expanded above the table, revealing not only the spoken order, but the blue pattern of light generated by the minister's official seal. Captain Vera studied it. The palace communication network can transmit images to every command post within 10 miles. Malrek controls the network, Lady Myrina said. Seraphine's mark brightened. He controls the network built by the Keeper's office. The first covenant predates it. She placed her palm over Nathan's hand. The archive responded to their joined marks. Golden light moved from the cylinder into the walls, traveling upward through the palace foundations. Malrek struck his staff against the floor, but the light passed through his command without slowing. Far above them, every palace bell stopped. Then Cross's recorded voice echoed across the city, repeating the secret order that had sent human forces toward the river. The message was followed by the image of his ministry seal and the payment records connecting his office to House Valor. Cross went pale. You have released classified information to 2 armies. We released the truth to the people expected to risk their lives for your lie, Nathan said. They may still advance, Lord Cashin warned. Soldiers do not always stop because their commander is corrupt. Seraphine entered the tunnel. Then we will meet them before they decide. Nathan followed, but she placed one hand against his chest and stopped him. The gesture was gentle. The command behind it was not. You remain here. The clans demanded me. I should be present. That is why you should not. You cannot prove you are protecting a witness by hiding him underground. I am not hiding you. I am refusing to deliver you into a crowd created to frighten both kingdoms. The covenant gives me the right to stand beside you. It gives you the right to refuse dangerous royal commands. Then I refuse this one. For a moment, the chamber waited between them. Seraphine had spent centuries surrounded by people who obeyed because of her title, feared because of her blood, or flattered because of her power. Nathan did none of those things. He challenged her because he believed protection without consent could become another kind of control. The realization moved through the bond, and her expression softened. You are making this very difficult, she said. That may be my special value. Your special value is that you say reasonable things at the most inconvenient possible moment. Then we agree I should come. We agree that I regret saving a diplomat. Junior treaty clerk. Not anymore. She lowered her hand. Stay within 6 feet of me. If the covenant weakens, we retreat. Together. Together. They entered the passage with Vera, Cashin, Myrina, and a small group of guards. Malrek remained in the archive, unwilling to abandon the staff's connection to the palace. Cross stayed under guard beside the evidence that had exposed him. The tunnel rose beneath the old river quarter and opened behind an abandoned chapel less than 3 blocks from the human district. Night covered the city in silver rain. Thousands of residents crowded the narrow streets between locked homes and closed shops. Human families gathered behind temporary barriers. Vampire workers from the river warehouses stood beside them, uncertain which side would consider them enemies. At the northern entrance, nearly 500 clan guards formed a silent line beneath dark banners. Across the river, human lanterns marked the approach of ministry troops. The two forces could see each other through the mist. Neither had advanced, but fear had already filled the space between them. When Seraphine stepped into the street, the crowd recoiled. Parents pulled children closer. Human guards raised shields. Some had never seen the princess except in warning posters distributed during border disputes. Without her crown and inherited power, she should have appeared less threatening. Instead, the crimson light of the covenant made her seem like the living center of the storm. Nathan walked beside her, visible to everyone. Murmurs moved through the district. The human witness was not chained. He was not being dragged to the clans. He stood at the princess's side by choice. A northern commander rode forward on a black horse and stopped 20 feet away. Lady Seraphine, the council has ordered Nathan Mercer surrendered to neutral custody. There is no neutral custody, she answered. Only frightened institutions asking others to carry the cost of their mistakes. The clans will not withdraw while a human holds power over the throne. Nathan stepped forward. I hold no power over her. The commander pointed toward their matching marks. Then why does she stand between you and the court? Seraphine moved ahead of Nathan before he could answer. Because he once stood between me and danger, and no one in this kingdom will punish him for teaching its princess what courage looks like. The words traveled through the crowded street. Windows opened above them. Workers emerged from doorways. Human soldiers across the river lowered their pace as Cross's exposed command continued to repeat through the palace network. The clan commander looked towards Seraphine's empty hands. You no longer carry the authority of the throne. Then your choice is simple. You may obey because I am right, or advance because no crown is forcing you to stop. The commander glanced back at his guards. The banners remained raised, but uncertainty spread through their formation. Seraphine walked toward them alone. Nathan immediately followed. She looked at him from the corner of her eye. 6 feet. I am counting. They stopped halfway between the human barriers and the northern clans. Seraphine turned so that both forces could see her. For centuries, my kind has told humans to fear our strength. Humans have answered by building laws around that fear. Tonight, both courts tried to prove themselves correct. They placed families behind barriers, soldiers beside a river, and one ordinary man between two governments that needed someone weaker to blame. She reached back and took Nathan's hand. The gesture was not ceremonial. It was public, deliberate, and impossible for the court to reinterpret. Crimson light moved from their joined marks across the wet street. It did not form weapons or walls. It spread into a wide circle surrounding the district, warming every lamp it touched. "Nathan Mercer is under my protection," she said. "So is every human, vampire, refugee, servant, and child trapped inside this conflict. Any command that requires harm to reach him must first pass through me." Nathan felt the covenant answer her choice. The power did not drain his heart. It steadied it. The crimson circle rose into a transparent dome over the district, high enough to cover the rooftops and wide enough to reach the riverbank. It was not a barrier against people. Human civilians crossed it without resistance. Vampire workers moved through it safely. Only weapons issued under Cross's false mobilization order became heavy and impossible to raise. Shields lowered. Silver mechanisms fell silent. The district watched the feared vampire princess use her strength not to claim territory, command obedience, or protect her throne, but to create a place where no one could be forced to begin the conflict. The northern commander dismounted. He removed his clan insignia and placed it on the ground. One by one, the guards behind him lowered their banners. Across the river, the first human unit stopped marching. Then another. Relief passed through the crowd, but it did not reach Seraphine. Nathan felt a sudden weakness move through the bond. The protective dome was drawing upon the power she had created through choice, and maintaining it over several city blocks was costing more than she admitted. Her fingers tightened around his. "You cannot hold this all night," he whispered. "I only need to hold it until they choose not to advance. And if they wait for you to collapse, then you will have to say something persuasive." Nathan looked toward the palace towers. A new red light appeared in the highest window. The keeper's banner rose above the throne hall. Malrek's voice entered the city through every bell and speaking tube. "Seraphine Vale has used forbidden power to seize the human district. By authority of the Blood Council, she is declared a threat to the Crimson Kingdom. All loyal clans will assemble at the palace before dawn for the final judgment." The crowd turned toward Seraphine. The woman who had protected them had just been named their enemy. Nathan felt her exhaustion, but he also felt her decision harden. She released his hand only long enough to face the palace. "He wants me to return alone," she said. "Then he has learned nothing," Nathan replied. Around them, human residents, vampire workers, northern guards, and ministry soldiers began stepping beneath the same crimson light. Captain Vera raised the princess's fallen banner. Lord Cashin stood beside her. Even Myrina Vaylor removed her veil and faced the palace openly. Seraphine looked at the people gathering behind her, then at Nathan. She had entered the district as the creature both sides feared. She would return to the court as the protector neither side had expected. "At dawn," she said, "we end this before everyone." By dawn, the road from the human district to the palace was filled not with an army, but with witnesses. Human families walked beside vampire dock workers. Northern clan guards carried lowered banners. Ministry soldiers crossed the river without weapons drawn, their officers holding copies of deputy minister crosses exposed orders. Captain Vera led the procession beneath Seraphine's crimson standard, while Lord Cashin and Lady Myrina walked several steps behind her. Nathan remained at Seraphine's side inside the fading circle of protective light. She had held the sanctuary through the final hours of darkness, and the effort showed in the careful rhythm of her breathing. The covenant carried her exhaustion into him, but it also carried something stronger, certainty. Malrek had expected fear to divide the city. Instead, every person he had tried to place on opposite sides now climbed the palace steps together. The great doors of the throne hall stood open. Members of the Blood Council filled the marble tiers, and the keeper's banner hung above the empty throne. Malrek waited at the center of the chamber with the staff held upright before him. Cross stood near the western railing under guard. His command seal returned to his hand by officials who still believed human law should judge him. The moment Seraphine entered, Malrek struck the staff against the floor. "This assembly recognizes Seraphine Vale as a threat to the kingdom. She has defied the council, sheltered a foreign agent, exposed protected records, and used forbidden power over civilians and soldiers." The covenant mark burned above Nathan's heart. Seraphine felt the lie with him, but neither stopped walking. Behind them, hundreds of residents entered the hall until the galleries and doorways were full. They did not kneel. That unsettled the council more than open rebellion would have. Seraphine stopped beneath the throne. I used power to prevent frightened people from being forced into conflict. You seized control of a city district. No one inside the sanctuary was prevented from leaving. You interfered with lawful military orders. Nathan stepped forward. Orders issued through fraud are not lawful simply because soldiers receive them. Malrek turned toward him. The mortal witness has no standing until the final truth is accepted. Nathan held up the silver key. Then let us finish the trial. The palace answered. The black marble circle beneath them opened in lines of golden light, but the hidden staircase did not appear. Instead, the voices of the hall of witnesses rose through the floor. Every glass record below projected its light into the throne chamber. Images formed above the assembly, cross-ordering human forces toward the river, Valor agents placing Nathan near Seraphine, council officials restoring access to forbidden silver, and Malrek preparing the Keeper's mandate before the assassination attempt occurred. The evidence surrounded the empty throne in a ring of living memory. Cross raised his command seal. These records were obtained outside recognized human procedure. Nathan faced the human gallery. That question belongs in a human court. Whether the evidence is inconvenient does not make it false. Cross pointed toward him. You betrayed your assignment. I reported what I observed until I learned the assignment had been designed to create the event I was supposed to report. You chose a vampire princess over your own government. Nathan looked at the human soldiers who had stopped at the river after hearing Cross's hidden order. A government is not the same thing as the people it claims to represent. I chose the people who would have paid for your decision. The mark over his heart remained calm. No lie followed the words. Several human officers removed the ministry insignia from their collars and placed them on the railing. Cross's authority did not disappear through magic. It disappeared because those expected to obey him had heard the truth. Malrek lifted the Keeper's staff higher. The actions of one corrupt human official do not restore Seraphine's claim. She surrendered inherited power, rejected council command, and bound the future of the throne to a mortal life. Yes, Seraphine said. The simplicity of her answer silenced the hall. Malrek had prepared to argue against excuses. She offered none. You admit that the human has become your weakness. I admit that before Nathan Mercer entered this court, I had mistaken isolation for strength. I believed a ruler proved herself by needing no one, trusting no one, and carrying every burden alone. That belief made me easy to control. You only had to call every act of mercy weakness, and I would retreat to protect my title. She turned so the court could see her clearly. Nathan did not weaken me. He made it impossible for me to continue hiding inside the version of power you approved. Lady Aurelia rose from the council tier. A ruler cannot place private devotion above public duty. Seraphine looked toward the crowd from the human district. Protection is not private when the law abandons the innocent. Truth is not private when two governments conspire to bury it. And devotion is not shameful merely because the person worthy of it was born human. Nathan felt the meaning of her words cross the covenant before the court fully understood them. This was no longer an accidental bond she defended out of obligation. She was choosing him publicly. The realization left him more exposed than any accusation had. Malrek recognized it too. Then the final truth is clear. You would abandon the throne for him. Seraphine looked at the empty obsidian seat. The royal chair from the hall of witnesses rose through the floor and appeared before her, glowing with the authority the archive had offered. All she had to do was sit. The original covenant would recognize her. The clans would be forced to confront a restored ruler. Yet the inscription across the chair had not changed. Let the throne be witnessed only by one willing to lose it. Seraphine placed one hand on its back. I will abandon any throne that demands his death, his silence, or his obedience as the price of my rule. Shock moved through the ancient clans. Malrek's staff brightened. Then you are no princess. The covenant answered before Seraphine could. Crimson light moved across the floor, surrounding not the chair, but the people who had followed her from the district. The palace bells began ringing. An inscription appeared above the empty throne in the oldest vampire language, followed by words every human in the room could read. The crown does not choose the witness. The protected choose the crown. One by one, voices rose from the hall. The Western Guard declared for Seraphine. The river workers followed. Human district representatives spoke next. Northern clan soldiers lowered their banners before her. Lord Cashin removed his ceremonial sword and placed it at the foot of the royal chair as a sign of peaceful allegiance. Even Lady Aurelia slowly sat, refusing to remain standing against the visible judgment of the kingdom. Malrek looked around as the authority he had preserved through fear passed beyond his reach. "They are civilians," he said. "They cannot decide succession." Nathan answered him. "Then what exactly is the kingdom for?" Malrek turned the staff toward the throne. Silver symbols raced along its surface as he invoked the keeper's final authority. By ancient mandate, the council may sever any bond that compromises royal independence. The golden records above the court shifted. Daniel Mercer and Queen Alara appeared beside the throne. Daniel's recorded voice filled the chamber. "The keeper's office shall preserve the law only until it attempts to place itself above the truth." Queen Alara raised her hand. "When that hour comes, the mortal witness must choose whether the covenant continues." The entire hall turned toward Nathan. The silver staff drew light from the palace walls, gathering enough authority to dissolve the connection between him and Seraphine. The bond gave Nathan the meaning without explanation. He could release it. Seraphine's inherited essence would return. She could take the throne without him, and the danger to his life would end only if the human healers found another way to sustain what the silver poison had damaged. Or he could accept the bond permanently, becoming the living limit upon her crown and the target of every institution that feared what their shared witness could expose. Seraphine stepped toward him. "Nathan, this choice must be yours. What do you want?" "Ancient law does not permit me to influence your answer." "I did not ask the law." The court disappeared from her expression. For one honest moment, she was the frightened girl beneath the schoolhouse floor, the exhausted princess in the moon garden, and the powerful woman who had placed herself between him and two armies. "I want you to live," she said, "even if living means leaving me. Even if the bond ends and the throne returns. I will not turn your sacrifice into a prison." Nathan thought of his father, who had taught him to protect others without becoming what they needed protection from. He thought of the blade, the archive, the district under crimson light, and every moment Seraphine had chosen his life when law offered easier alternatives. "I spent years believing a good man proved his worth by giving everything away," he said. "You taught me that staying can require more courage than disappearing." He reached for her hand. "I do not accept this bond because I owe you my life. I accept it because I trust the woman who gave up a throne rather than claim ownership of it." Their marks met. The crimson symbol completed itself between their palms, and the keeper's silver light broke apart into harmless sparks. Malrek's staff went dark. The final words of the trial appeared above them. "The mortal chooses freely. The royal chooses without command. The witnesses stand equal. The third truth is accepted." The obsidian throne changed. Its towering back divided into two lower seats separated by a narrow table, one marked with the crown and the other with the open eye of the mortal witness. Seraphine looked at Nathan, but neither approached them yet. She turned first to Malrek. "You will receive the lawful judgment you denied others. You will speak before both courts, with counsel, evidence, and witnesses." Captain Vera took the darkened staff from his hands. Cross was placed under joint human and vampire custody, protected from revenge and prevented from destroying the records. Lady Myrina surrendered House Vaylor's hidden seals and accepted an open inquiry into her clan's role in Thomas Mercer's death. No one was dragged away in anger. Nathan had demanded truth instead of revenge, and Seraphine made that principle the first law of her restored authority. Morning sunlight entered through the high windows. The court that had once frozen at the sight of a human saving its princess now watched the princess take his hand before everyone. "Nathan Mercer," she said, "will you stand beside me when this becomes difficult?" He looked at the divided throne, then at the people waiting below it. "It already is." A quiet laugh escaped her, surprised and warm. That was not an answer. "Yes," he said, "I will stand beside you." Together, they turned toward the court as the final bell of judgment gave way to the first bell of a new reign. 6 months later, the throne hall no longer felt like a place built to make ordinary people small. The highest galleries remained carved from black marble, and crimson banners still hung between the silver pillars, but the floor beneath the divided throne now held a long, open table where human representatives, vampire clans, border workers, and city delegates met beneath the same light. Seraphine occupied the seat marked by the crown only when formal judgment required it. Nathan sat beside her in the chair bearing the open eye, wearing the repaired gray coat his father had once mended. He had refused every jeweled robe offered by the royal tailors. Seraphine claimed this was stubbornness. Nathan called it efficient budgeting. The border treaty had been rewritten under public witness. Human villages received direct access to the royal grain roads. Vampire refugees gained legal protection in human territory. The Hall of Witnesses became an independent archive governed by clerks from both peoples, with every private name protected from political revenge. Adrian Cross and Lord Malrek received open trials with counsel, evidence, and the right to answer every accusation. Lady Myrena testified about House Valer's actions and surrendered its hidden network. No secret execution followed. No convenient disappearance erased what had happened. Nathan insisted that justice had to remain recognizable even when applied to those who had denied it to others, and Seraphine turned that principle into law. On the first anniversary of Thomas Mercer's death, they traveled to Willow Creek without guards and ceremonial armor. The old schoolhouse still leaned slightly west, though the roof had finally been repaired. Human families and vampire settlers gathered together beside the river. A small stone memorial stood beneath the oak tree where Thomas once taught children during summer. It carried no heroic title, only the words he had lived by. Courage is one tired person deciding not to look away. Nathan stood before it in silence. Through the covenant, Seraphine felt his grief without trying to lessen it. She placed a folded brown coat beneath the inscription, a careful replica of the one Thomas had wrapped around her when she was frightened and alone. I spent years believing I had failed him, she said. Perhaps we both did, Nathan replied. But he never asked us to be perfect. He asked us to choose what happened next. Seraphine took his hand. Their matching marks had faded from bright crimson to soft silver lines, visible only beneath moonlight. The bond no longer forced emotions across the distance. It carried them only when freely offered. And what happens next? She asked. Nathan looked toward the schoolhouse, where human and vampire children were arguing cheerfully over the rules of a game neither side fully understood. Something inconvenient, complicated, and probably worth protecting. Her smile appeared slowly, no longer hidden from a council or restrained by a crown. You still have not learned how to give a simple answer. You still ask dangerous questions. That evening, they returned to the riverbank after the village lanterns were lit. Seraphine removed the royal signet from her hand and placed it in Nathan's palm. It was not an order, a claim, or an ancient obligation. The court will expect a formal announcement eventually, she said. The court expects many things. Nathan. He closed his fingers gently around the ring. I stood beside you when the choice could have cost everything. I am not leaving now that the future has become difficult in quieter ways. That is still not a formal answer. Yes, Seraphine, I choose you. The covenant warmed between them, not because ancient law demanded recognition, but because both of them had spoken freely. She rested her forehead against his, and for a few peaceful seconds there was no throne, no council, and no history waiting to be repaired. There was only a human man who had once believed his value depended on sacrifice and a vampire princess who had once believed love would make her weak. Neither belief had survived the other. When they returned to the palace, the divided throne remained exactly as they had left it. One seat for power, one for conscience, and a narrow table between them where truth could be placed before either became dangerous alone. Seraphine took Nathan's hand before the watching court, not to protect him from the world, but to show the world that they had chosen to protect it together.